The Detroit Lions won the battle with the Dallas Cowboys, but they may have lost the war. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every single Monday, by Locked On NFL expert Gino Camilleri. On today's episode, the Cincinnati Bengals saved their season with defense. Drake May was a lamb to slaughter against the Houston Texans, and the Detroit Lions may have won the game, but they might have lost their season. Before we get in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day, and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code Locked On NFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So the Detroit Lions absolutely dismantled the Dallas Cowboys 47-9. It was a complete embarrassment in Dallas, but the Lions' season could be in trouble as top-tier edge rusher Aidan Hutchinson. It's graphic, folks, but he snapped his leg, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. It was a really gruesome injury. So the Lions win in great fashion. But I got to tell you, Gino, I think without Aidan Hutchinson, the Lions' season goals are out the window. They cannot win a Super Bowl this year without Aidan Hutchinson.
I'm going to counter you here, Tyler. Who in the NFC is going to challenge them right now? This thing is wide open, man.
Yeah, that feels fair. And of course, they could make some sort of move. I mean, Hassan Reddick seems like a big risk right now, but they can make that move. Max Crosby was pushing an assistant coach on the sidelines today. He says he's a Raider for life, but things change quickly in the NFL. I guess it is possible that maybe they could make a move. But if they don't make a move, you think looking around at the NFC landscape, the Lions are still the team to beat even without Hutchinson?
I think when you look at Dan Campbell and the consistency that he has brought to that Lions team over the last year and a half, right now, and this is just through week 6 of the NFL, I think in the NFC, they're the dog to beat. You look at San Francisco, up and down. My Philadelphia Eagles, who knows what's going on with them? We're going to talk about the NFC East. Are they even the contenders there? In the North, that's where it's going to be a battle. We'll see how Minnesota continues to push along with that Sam Darnold movement, and 17-5 overall in the NFC North right now as a division. I think Detroit, the way they are built, being able to win at home, especially if they get a home playoff game and maybe even that bye as the 1 seed, it's going to be tough for any team to go into that building. And even without Aidan Hutchinson, that's a very good defense. And the way they play offense, running the ball. David Montgomery signs that extension. He goes out and has a crazy game today. Happy birthday, Jerry Jones, by the way. Turns 82. Worst loss since he's ever owned the team. Just throwing that out there. But Dan Campbell, if you're going to say any coach can keep this ship afloat based on the mentality of just next man up, I got to say it's Dan Campbell, simply because he's done it over the last 2 years.
That's fair. And you look outside of Dan Campbell, obviously Ben Johnson, one of the hottest coaching candidates, turned down head coaching jobs to stay in Detroit. He's obviously fantastic and will probably get a head coaching job this next cycle. And then Aaron Glenn is the defensive coordinator, another guy who got some head coaching interviews, clearly one of the top defensive coordinators when he's got the talent to operate. Brian Branch looked good in this game as well. They've added in the secondary. They may be able to stay afloat, but I do have to be honest and think that without Aidan Hutchinson and that punch in the pass rush, I think when it becomes playoff time, which is obviously far from now, it would be the difference in the Lions being able to win a Super Bowl versus them being able to just compete. But, we're going to see things play out. That NFC North, as you were saying, all 4 teams have 4 wins or more. Absolutely wild stuff. Now, look into a division that maybe is disappointing and that is the NFC East, where the Dallas Cowboys were an absolute embarrassment. Gino, we said this before. We don't got to talk much about the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, that was clearly one of the most embarrassing losses that they've taken, at least since I've been alive, and I know you're around the same age. But looking at a team that didn't embarrass themselves, even though they lost, and that's the Washington Commanders. They took on the Baltimore Ravens, and they gave the Ravens a fight. The Ravens did win 30-23, and Lamar Jackson is still the top dog, even though Jayden Daniels obviously on his heels in a quarterback comparison there. But we're going to throw it to David Harrison from Locked On Commanders, who put more context into this. Not a bad loss for the Commanders.
30-23, the Washington Commanders fall to the Baltimore Ravens in Week 6. And while it's not a measuring stick game, it still kind of is. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast. And if there is one big takeaway from this Week 6 loss for the Washington Commanders, honestly, it's that they can go toe-to-toe with a Super Bowl contender. The Baltimore Ravens still, even though they had a little bit of a rough start to the season, considered by many to be one of the best teams in the National Football League, a prime contender to the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And they have the reigning MVP quarterback Lamar Jackson. Without Brian Robinson, their starting running back, Dorrance Armstrong, their best pass rusher, leaves the game in the second quarter. And then Jonathan Allen, their veteran defensive tackle, leaves later, but they still come up just one score shy of beating the Baltimore Ravens. For more on this game and everything Commanders related, check out the Locked On Commanders podcast, 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Again, even though it's a loss, I think you got to be incredibly impressed with Jayden Daniels in this game. Looking at 24 for 35, 269, had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You look on the other side of things, Lamar Jackson, 20 for 26, 323, had the touchdown. For the Ravens, to me, it's the run game. Derrick Henry, 24, 132, had the 2 touchdowns. You got to give credit to Zay Flowers, 9 for 132. He's really starting to ascend with Lamar Jackson. But to me, the difference in the game was really the run game. Jayden Daniels only able to run for 22 yards, 52 yards overall in the rushing game for Washington without Brian Robinson. Then Baltimore runs for 176 yards. The Ravens were just the more physical, more experienced team. But I think you look at the Commanders, and they're true contenders. It's not a fluke. It's not smoke and mirrors like maybe we might have thought even with their wins.
I think what Daniels gives this team each and every week, and if you focus on the lack of run game for Washington, is that this kid can throw them into games and keep them in games with his arm. And what they are doing with Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn allowing Cliff to just play into the strengths of Daniels, that's exactly how you set up a young quarterback for success in today's day and age. Is he a guy that is perfect right now? Absolutely not. But are they doing things that go into his weaknesses? No, they're allowing him to throw the ball downfield, play with his confidence, run when called upon. And if he's efficient, that's one thing that rookies are just not doing. They're turning the ball over. Even second-year players, even fifth-year players in Jalen Hurts, man. To be an efficient young passer is going to take him so far. And this is just his first year. Wait until that offense continues to just shore up that offensive line, maybe even add a better back in this loaded draft class. And the weapons they have on the outside, that's a lethal group that they have there in Washington. And you're seeing it. Being able to compete with Baltimore, David Harrison, measuring stick game, bang on in that comparison.
Yeah, they may have lost, but it's a good loss, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you look at the Eagles won, but it wasn't a great win. And they barely, I think that I wouldn't have believed this, but like a couple of weeks ago, but I do actually believe that the Commanders are the best team in the NFC East now, despite maybe other teams like the Cowboys and Eagles looking like they have more talent. But with that being said, there is a team in the AFC East who put their rookie quarterback up for slaughter against the Houston Texans, and that's the New England Patriots. I called it a big mistake all last week, and it turned into exactly that. A lot more to discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by him. Guys, your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside of your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and a one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked-on. That's HIMS.com/locked-on for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/locked-on. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with an healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including, here are just some examples: Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution; Introduction to Free Market Economics, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to get registered. Hillsdale.edu/locked-on. All right, Gino, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, recapping a crazy week 6 in the NFL. We talked about the Lions winning the game, but maybe losing their season. Talked about the Baltimore Ravens knocking off the Washington Commanders, but to me, the Commanders being competitive in that game is the real story there. But we got to look at a disaster situation and talk about some teams in the AFC South. Now, two of these teams are a disaster. One created the disaster for the New England Patriots, and that's the Houston Texans. I said all week last week, Gino, that it would be a massive mistake for the New England Patriots to put Drake May out there in his first game ever in the NFL against the Houston Texans. It made no sense whatsoever. And of course, the New England Patriots go out there and get absolutely drubbed, 41-21. Drake May's stats look okay. 20 of 33, 243 passing yards, had 3 touchdowns, a couple of really good throws. The one to Keyshawn Butte was absolutely fantastic down the right sideline, but also had 2 interceptions, got sacked 4 times, had a QBR of 31.1. Drake May is not ready, and the Patriots ran the ball for 82 yards and 38 were Drake May. Drake May is not ready to play yet, and the Patriots as a team aren't ready for Drake May to play yet. I just think it's absolute malpractice and negligence by the Patriots to put Drake May out there against the Houston Texans.
When it comes to this young quarterback discussion, the thing that I can't stand personally, Tyler, is the lack of a plan. This is a lack of a plan. Where was the plan with Jacoby Brissett? Was he to be a bridge quarterback? Was he to get you to last week and then this was the game that they decided, oh, Drake May has to go in right now? And they couldn't audible when their offensive line was depleted to less than bare bones. You talk about malpractice. If you don't have an offensive line in the league, which can even keep your guy upright, and heads off to Drake May, I thought in that performance where you get hit a bunch of times and you're able to push the ball down the field, some good moments from the young kid in his first start, but they have to set him up better. Gerard Mayo has to do a better job to say, maybe this might not be the week. Maybe there is a little pushback in those coaching meetings saying, yeah, we want to see him. Everybody wants to take the Lamborghini out of the garage. But if it's the middle of the winter and an ice storm just hit, let's keep the Lamborghini in the garage and maybe wait another week. And that Houston front, I don't know. Hey, he's got bigger cojones than I do because I'm not stepping out there as a quarterback, man. That's a good team. Hats off to them. But post Bill Belichick, there have been some questionable decisions in terms of personnel and how it has been structured in New England.
You're 100% right, dude. And to me, it's a lack of self-awareness. It's like we don't realize how bad we are. To me, I theorize that it might have been an owner mandate. The way that they got beat against the Dolphins and how boring that game was, the owner might have come down and said, hey, we can't sell the fans on this product going forward. We got to give them something to be excited about, some reason to sell tickets. Hey, come see Drake May. Because honestly, look at it. The Texans this week, terrible idea to play Drake May. Then it's going to be a short week for them because they're going to have to fly to London and take on the Jaguars, who are already in London. So they're going to have an advantage there. Then when they come back from London, more travel, they take on the Jets defensive front. The Titans are a terrible football team, but they have a really good defensive front. The Bears defensive front. You have those 3 games after you get back from a trip to London against a team that's already in London. And then after that, you play the Rams. You play the Dolphins again. You play the Colts. You play the Cardinals. That is when Drake May should have been coming into this season in the middle of November when he's had more experience to learn the offense. Maybe you've been able to get some guys back on the offensive line, get some more health. Like, they're just setting him up to get absolutely mauled by a bunch of really, really good defensive lines with travel to London involved in that. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever for them to do this now. So I'm just really disappointed in the way, and you made a great point. They're literally trying to take the Lamborghini out in an ice storm, and it just does not make any sense whatsoever. But talking about not making any sense, the AFC South bottom dwellers, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars need a new head coach. Doug Peterson is saying they need a culture change. You're the guy who makes the culture. You got Andre Cisco saying that there was a lot of quit out there when the Jaguars got absolutely drubbed by the Chicago Bears in the 9:30 game. And then the Titans, Will Levis is a constant meme. He's the butt of every joke. He threw another interception, leading the league in turnovers. The Titans have a terrible pass offense, went against the worst passing defense in the NFL, and threw for 95 total passing yards as a team. Just despicable performances from the Jaguars and the Titans. Gino, I pose this question to you. Which of those teams is the worst football team?
Jacksonville. And why I say that, Doug Peterson has lost that team, and I know personally that if he loses a team, it can go south quickly. And this is exactly what happened in Philadelphia in 2020. And for Andre Cisco to outright say, after a game where if you look at history, the London Jaguars are statistically very good and perform well across the pond, and they got their teeth kicked in by Caleb Williams and that football team. Tennessee needs a quarterback. I think foundationally, there are a lot more pieces to work with there in Tennessee. The Jaguars, it's like, if Doug goes, then where does the rest of the dam break? Because it's not going to be one guy to overhaul that culture. There's going to be a lot of guys in that locker room right now that more than likely are going to have to be elsewhere before this thing turns around. Because if Andre Cisco in week 6 is saying there's a lot of quit in this team, there are a lot deeper foundational issues than just what is going on that football field. And I think you could see it with the body language. Doug Peterson doesn't look great in press conferences. The team doesn't look great when they're taking the field, when they're on the field. At least in Tennessee, it's a clear and obvious problem. I don't know if you can see through the mist and kind of figure out where the issues lie in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah, it's almost like when you're sick. Like, you're sick. If you don't know why you're sick, that's almost a bigger problem than, hey, I'm sick. I have something bad that is making me sick, but at least I know what it is and we can go address that problem. In Jacksonville, it's like the coaching is bad, but their roster should be better than it is. It's like impossible to pinpoint exactly what the issue is. So you're kind of, swimming in the middle of the ocean without any land. It's, you got a problem on your hands, but you don't know how to solve it. So I don't think I'm in a position to answer that question of which team is worse. They're both bad. And the team that I cover and care about is absolutely god-awful too. So I'm not going to answer that question, but I'm glad you did. because the people deserve to know which of those teams is worse. But the AFC South is just a runaway victory for the Houston Texans. That's what we know right now. But the Cincinnati Bengals saved their season on Sunday Night Football. And the craziest part about it is it was the defense, not the offense, that led today. More coming up on Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun way to play daily fantasy sports, period. That's why they have over 10 million members and billions of dollars have been awarded in winnings. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I love Prize Picks. It's so much fun to set your lineup. Again, it's 2 to 6 players. And all you do is pick more or less. Justin Jefferson, 83.5 receiving yards. Patrick Mahomes, 267.5 passing yards. Saquon Barkley, 67.5 rushing yards. Again, all you do is say more or less than the Prize Picks projection. So make sure that you download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download Prize Picks today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Gino, we're going to cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, recapping at least most of the games of Week 6 in the NFL. Still got a Monday night matchup between the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills, which, if the Jets win, they could be leading the AFC East.
Crazy.
That's pretty crazy to think about with the way the Jets season has gone. But that's the stakes on Monday Night Football. I got a feeling that my guy Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jags and the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL is going to be talking about that matchup. Make sure that you tune in for that second round of Locked On NFL and step into the barbershop with Tony Wiggins later this afternoon. But the Cincinnati Bengals beat the New York Giants 17-7. They were 1-4. If they drop to 1-5, the season is absolutely over for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. No doubt about it. The Bengals view themselves as a team that can win the Super Bowl before the year. And the crazy thing is, Gino, is Joe Burrow has been throwing it all over the place throughout the beginning of the season. And the offenses look fantastic, scoring 30 points, it seems, almost every week. They're one play away from beating the Chiefs, one play away from beating the Ravens. But in this game against the Giants, it was the Bengals' defense, which has been awful for most of the year, that stepped up in a major way, got sacks on Daniel Jones, created turnovers. The Bengals' defense saved them. They got healthier on the defensive line in this game, and maybe this will be momentum for the Bengals going forward.
I have to say that Trey Hendrickson might be a top 10 edge rusher that nobody ever talks about and has been
top 5 this year.
Disrespected since his days in New Orleans. He is the gloveless wonder. He's unbelievable. He's so refined, man. He has that cross chop. He has that dip and rip. He has so many moves. And Cincinnati, you talk about it. You knew what your fastball was. It's Joe Burrow in that passing offense. We could throw the ball down the field with the best of them. But if we need a stop, how are we going to get it? And I think you found that out today. I think you are starting to figure out that if Cincinnati wants to compete in the AFC North, defense, that's exactly what all those teams have. Baltimore, as good as their offense is, has a very good defense. We'll keep Cleveland's offense out of this, but their defense is actually something that they can write home a little bit about. And then you talk about Pittsburgh, 4-2. Why? Not because of the offense. It's the defense. Cleveland, you got to draft and win to beat your division. They might have found something in terms of that defensive production. It was against a Giants team without Malik Neighbors, but you knew that being kind of left-handed in this game, that they were going to have to keep the ball underneath. They weren't going to push it down the field. You were going to have to get to Daniel Jones quickly. They did a fantastic job to counter Brian Daboll's game plan on the road too. I mean, that's a fantastic outing, holding the Giants to 7 points at home. the Bengals got to feel really good about themselves to save your season, quite literally, to go in 2-3. The Ravens are cooking. You had to keep up the pace. Starts with what's in front of you, and today they figured it out a little bit.
And the good news for the Bengals is outside of the division leaders in the AFC, the wild card is wide open.
Absolutely.
The AFC is super top heavy this year with not a lot in the middle. So the Bengals at 2-4 can make a push. I do want to make another point about Trey Hendrickson here. 2 sacks on Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas, maybe, I say maybe, but the reality is he's a top 5 left tackle in the NFL week to week, typically. And Trey Hendrickson, people think, football, you got to dominate every snap. That's just not the reality. Thomas won his fair share of reps, but if you let Trey Hendrickson get 2 sacks on your quarterback, you lost that battle. That's not what you expect from a guy the quality of Andrew Thomas at left tackle. So I was really impressed, like you said, with Trey Hendrickson. He's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. The Bengals defense really needed to respond. If they gave up a bunch of points and lost to the Giants without Malik Neighbors, it truly would have been a season ender for them to go to 1-5. So big stuff from the Bengals. And Joe Burrow looking like a dual threat quarterback out there. His biggest play of the game was the 47-yard touchdown run to get the Bengals on the board. Chase Brown finishes it off with a 30-yard touchdown run to seal it for the Bengals. The Bengals won this game with defense and running the ball. And I think, like you're saying, that's something that they're never going to go fully away from Burrow in the passing game, but they have to be able to do those other things. And when they had Mixon and they had the good defense when they made their Super Bowl run, that's what they relied on when it really mattered. You know what I mean? And I do, on the Giants side, want to give some credit to defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. Shane Bowen came from the Tennessee Titans, so he was a guy that I covered for a long time. And basically all of the previous matchups in recent years against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Bengals were able to win most of those, but the Titans have given the Bengals trouble with a defense versus offense thing. You go back to the playoff when the Bengals had on that Super Bowl run, the Titans had 9 sacks on Joe Burrow. Now, Ryan Tannehill choked like a dog, and that's what lost him the game. But the Titans defense smothered the Bengals. The Titans beat the Bengals last season like 24-3. Shane Bowen you get some of these matchups where a defensive coordinator plays a certain team so many times. I think Lou Anarumo from the Bengals has this on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. You play a team so many times in such high-level situations that you really have a good grasp. And, if Shane Bowen got any help whatsoever from the offensive side of the ball from the Giants probably win this game. But I want to give credit where it's due. Shane Bowen is an underrated defensive coordinator, and he's getting the most out of that Giants defensive front with Dexter Lawrence. And Azeez Ojulari looked absolutely unreal in the first half. Brian Burns started making some plays after being a no-show against the Cowboys. So credit where it's due to that defensive front from the Giants. They're a problem.
I was just going to say, some guy that didn't even play today might be the biggest winner in Joe Shane on the Giants side of the ball. You look at that Brian Burns acquisition, it paid off dividends today. As good as Trey Hendrickson was for the Cincinnati Bengals, it was hard to not look at the other side of the ball and say, yeah, that number 0 is a pretty good football player. And hats off to Azeez Ojulari as well. Those guys are going to give all those teams in the NFC East problems. And I don't think they could win with Daniel Jones still, and that's clear and evident, but you see teams that do have those top quarterbacks. These games aren't pretty in this day and age. It is run the ball to win. It took Joe Burrow his first and longest rushing touchdown since his days at LSU to win this football game, and Chase Brown finding a little footing there in that offense, getting downhill pretty quickly, had some nice decisive runs for them. You have to be multiple in this NFL. And if Cincinnati wants any chance to continue to win and get out of this hole that they've dug themselves into, it started tonight, and they found a couple pitches in their bag that they didn't have before.
Yeah, they took their first step forward. And on the Giants side, Tyrone Tracy looks like a real player there at running back. He was pretty impressive in this game. But with that being said, crazy week 6 in the NFL every week is just so entertaining. It's why we love this sport and this league so much. I'm going to be back tomorrow with Lauren Cox breaking down the Monday Night Football matchup, talking some other big storylines in the NFL. Make sure that you get subscribed stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. For Gino Camilleri, I am Tyler Rowland, the Madman. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as I tell you guys every single episode, stay safe out there.